Hi friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Saurabh Chabra, and today we're going to discuss about application gateway, and I would be giving as a demo for path-based routing. So in my previous videos, I talked about the load balancers, and in my last video, I showed you uh, creating a normal external load balancer from Terraform, and then I gave you the demo. So I build that code from Terraform. So I would be continuing that particular lab itself. So just to reiterate it, what the scenario is, we have two VMs that is behind a load balancer, and those two VMs have IIS installed in it. So what I did was I created folders inside that IIS folder where I created two different folders, one for images and one for video, so that and that was happened for two different Windows server. So the main motive is to accomplish a URL that should be working for both the servers. And when we are, you know, writing the complete URL, then slash Windows, then sorry slash video, then it should go to the video server. And if we are writing slash images, then it should go through the images VM. So that's what I did. I created two VMs which was already there, and I created two folders inside the IES folder inside wroot and iNetwork. And I can probably show you. Let me just show you in one of the VM, and then it is the same. So this is my VM, and let me show you inside C drive, iNetpub, www root. I created one image folder for the image VM, which is VM02, VM02, right? And similarly, there is VM01, which has Windows folder, um, which has video folder here, and inside that uh, we have written like vmci hub w01 slash windows. The idea is to get the URL working where it should be path-based routing, and whenever we are writing slash images, it should go to the VM02, and if we are writing videos, it should go to VM01. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll quickly jump into application gateway, and I'll show you how to actually go ahead and create an application gateway for you guys, and show you what all things that we need to select in order for this tool working. So in application gateway, there are three levels to it. Uh, the basic difference between a normal load balancer and an application gateway is that this is working at layer 7. You can work with the data. The load balancer is actually reading your data. It's actually trying to understand what kind of application it is, right? And on top of that, it due to some rules, we can alter the traffic, right? We can alter where the traffic would go. So that is why the application gateway is useful in terms of it is most of the time public facing, but we can use the same application gateway for internal traffic as well. So if we have a public IP attached to it, it would become as an external application gateway. If we have a private IP which should be part of a subnet, then it would be part of it will be a internal facing application gateway. So let's just jump in. So as I said, when we are creating application gateway, uh, the only difference, right, the main difference is that it's layer 7. So how to accomplish that? To accomplish that, uh, we have a load balance, we have a front-end IP, which would be the public IP. Just behind that public IP, there would be a listener who would listen what all traffic which is coming from your public IP. And it's the listener, it can be one or more listeners if we are creating multi sites, and if it is a shared application gateway, the listeners, uh, the number can count can go up. If it is for one application, then we should have only one listener to it. Okay, so there is a listener who is listening your traffic, right? And then there is a backend pool, just like a case in load balancer as well, right? We have a backend pool, and backend pool can be VM scale set, can be Kubernetes applications, can be a web app, can be virtual machines, right? It can be anything. Once we have those backend pools, we would have backend settings. In backend settings, what we do is we would be telling that here is the backend, and when the traffic is saying that the URL saying is slash images, then it should go to this particular backend server. When it is saying slash video, it should go to the video server, right? So that was the place where we would be placing the backend settings is all about, right? The other thing that we will need to do is the rule. So we have our front-end IP, we have our listeners, we have our backend pool, then we have backend settings. The main thing which is left is the rule. So what rule does is it basically forms a connection between the three of them, right? Between your listeners and your backend pool consisting of backend settings, you create a rule out of it. And application gateway once created work on that rule to be able to use to be able to uh, you know a, to be able to go to the URL, and we are able to access the website. Okay, so let's just quickly create one application gateway, and I'll just show you. So I'm creating it in a hub. We all know, I mean, uh, I have created my infrastructure at hub and spoke, and if you want to understand hub and spoke, you go back to my previous video. And so I have selected the hub RG. I'm just typing the name of my application gateway. It's app gateway 001, whatever you want to write, right? I'm selecting Central India as the location. Okay, so here it comes with the tier standard V1, standard V2, WAF, and WAF V2, right? Standard and standard V2 are pretty much similar. If we are placing your application gateway as a standard and standard V2, in production, what we do is we usually have WAF enabled, right? So if we are not using WAF gateway, then we have to have a front door or a traffic manager or any sort of filtering which WAF enabled firewall that we need it, right? So in that case, we use front door. That would be you know just ahead of your application gateway. So your public IP would be going to the front door. Behind that front door, there would be an application gateway, and behind that application gateway would be your VMs. But if you are not creating a standard V2, and if you are creating a WAF, then you have the have more you can manage the filtering of your traffic which is coming from outside, and it is intelligent enough to stop most of the threats, the common known threats that's coming. It is usually updated at Microsoft website what all traffic it's allowed and what all traffic it's not allowed. If you want to allow certain parameters, like there are some IPs which needs to be whitelisted, so you would have the option to do that. You would have the option to select source, the and the port number, and that would be whitelisted. So if you select WAF v2 or WAF, then you would be able to do that. Otherwise, you usually have front door ahead of an application gateway so that you can manage web application firewall onto from your front door. So in this particular scenario, I'm selecting standard v2, so I'm not showing WAF enabled application gateway. I'm just showing you a standard basic one, but the updated version, which is a standard v2. I am selecting the max instance to be 2. So if there's if the traffic on that particular application is more, then there can be a case where Microsoft is, deploying another instance, and the max instance is 2. So we are creating one, and the max can be 2. Availability zone. So there are three types of availability zone. So if I select 2, then the application gateway would be in 2. If I'm selecting 3, so it depends upon the instance count, right? So one would be at 1, one would be at 2, and the other one would be at 3. So that is where you can select your availability zone, right? I'm not enabling HTTP2. The other thing that I need to do is I need to select the VNet. Once I select the VNet, I need to select the subnet. It would be a dedicated subnet. So for application gateway, there has to be a dedicated subnet. You cannot place your application gateway inside a subnet where different VMs are there. No, that's not possible. You can have more than one application gateway inside a subnet, inside the app gateway subnet, but you cannot have application gateway with different tiers inside a subnet. So in that case, you cannot have a standard v2, a WAF v1 inside one application gateway. So either it has to be version 1 or it has to be version 2, right? Then only you would be able to have both of them inside a application gateway subnet, right? So currently we are just creating one, so it would be allowed. So next thing would be to create a front-end IP, and I would be creating one. So you can create a private as well, and that can be a static, or when you select private, then your application gateway IP would be inside that subnet, right? It would be pulling up the IP address from the subnet that you have place your application gateway in, right? So currently what I'll do is I'll just quickly show you how to create a normal uh, PIP, right? Public IP. I'm creating as a standard and a static because that is needed for this SKU, because I have selected standard version 2. So if I have not selected standard version 2 and I have selected standard, then it would have been allowed me basic, but as I select standard v2, it's not allowing me to select anything. It is by default giving me a standard and a static. It cannot be a dynamic, right? It has to be static. In case of application gateway, you were able to have a dynamic IP in terms of a load balancer, which I showed you in my last video. But in terms of application gateway, you cannot do that. It has to be static. Okay. So once I select static, then the next thing would be to select the backend pool. So in this case, as I already told you, that I have already created two VMs, right? So I would be selecting those two VMs. So I would be creating two backend pools, one for images and one for video. So let me just create a backend pool for let's say a video. Okay, and I would be selecting the virtual machine, which would be 01. Okay, and then adding it to it. Then I am selecting another backend pool, which would be for images, 01, and that would be BP backend pool. And I'm selecting the virtual machine number 2 in it. So in this way, we have just selected the backend uh, pools, right? We have created two different pools. The next thing would be to configure it. So as I told you in my introduction piece, right? So there would be three things. One would be the front end IP. The second would be the backend pool. The third thing would be the routing rules. And the fourth thing was the backend settings, right? So we didn't create it as of now. So when we are creating rules, then we will be creating two more things. One is the listener one, and the other one is the rule. The third one would be the backend settings. Okay, let me just show it to you. So what I'll do is I'll just type it as rule 01. I'll give it a priority because there can be more than one rule, right? And higher the priority, the more that rule is take precedent of the other rules, right? The next thing would be to create a listener. As I said, listener would be the device who would listen your traffic which is coming from the public IP, and to you know and the rule will decide where the listener's traffic would go, right? Listener 01. So what I'll do is we have to select the public IP, and then I'm not giving HTTPS. We are just working on HTTP. But just to show you, if we are using HTTPS, then it would be asking for the certificates, and you need to install PFX certificate here in order to your website to work, right? So this is where you upload the PFX file. So I'm just selecting as 80. You are selecting its basic. So if it is a shared application gateway, then you would be selecting multi-site. But as of now, it is basic. So we are just going to add it, but it will not allow me to add because we are have to select backend targets. And inside that backend target, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select video as first. So every time, you know, the backend target would be your initial server, that would be video server. Okay, if you want to create a separate backend target, that can also be happening, but in that case you won't know. It will go to the video VM or VM1 or VM2, right? It would be random if you are selecting a backend pool which has both the VMs. But in this case we want your direct, the first URL would be the video URL. And if you type images, then it should go to images, right? And if you type video, it should go to video for that matter as well. So this is where you select the video backend pool. The second thing would be of creating the backend settings. So this is where you select and create a backend settings. So let me just create a backend settings for you. So I'm doing nothing. It's port 80. I don't have to enable this. I don't have to enable this. If you want your host to be picked from your virtual machine, then you need to override this and pick the host from the backend target. So if you select this, then it gives you an option to override the specific domain with the URL that you want, or pick the hostname from the backend target, or just select no, so that it quickly goes to the direct whatever URL that you have already given. The next thing is to add this particular. So once we have added this rule, the next thing would be to create tag and review and create, and then we click on create, and then it starts creating. So just to save time, what I have done was I have already created an application gateway. Okay, so this is the exact same settings that I have selected. Let me go back and show you. So this is the application gateway that I created. Just wanted to show you that it got created and it has the same setting as such. So we have two backend pools. One is Windows VM01, second is images VM02, and we have backend settings, which is a common settings. We have not enabled cookie-based affinity, right? If you want to enable it, you can enable it. Front-end IP is the public IP that we have already given. Okay, the second is the listener, right? So we created a listener where we have associated a listener with the rule, and if we open the rule, let me just open the rule first. So go into the rule, and this is what the rule looks like. We have a listener, we have backend targets, and backend targets. By backend targets, we mean by default it will go to window VM with the backend settings. And if we have path-based routing, right? As I said, we need to have path-based routing. So this is where you add that. When we click on add, it will give us an option to add that. This is very important because we need to select slash video slash star to be able to get all the subfolders as well, because the first the folder would be video, and inside that there would be multiple videos, multiple folders, right? Similarly is the case with images. So if we want to add, so what we need to do is we click on here, we can add whatever path we want to give. We need to give the target name, the backend settings. We need to select as settings, and then the backend target. So for video, I select video VM1. For image, I select image 02. Okay. So you could see here, these are the settings, images, which is the target name, backend setting is the same. And then I selected the backend pool as images 02. So this is where the the settings are done. I have not uh, created any health probes, but you can always create the health probe to be able to understand if your web URL and if your particular page is working or not, right? So I'll go back. I'll just open that public IP, and this is my URL, which should be working. Yeah, so this is my URL. Let me just go back, copy this, and try to open it just to show you that how these things work, right? So this is the URL. Okay, so by default, it should be going to video, right? As I told you, it should be going to video. So if I type it here as video, it should again give me the same web page, right? But there can be a case where we are going into a different path, right? If I want to go to a different path, to a different site, then it should be giving me as images, which is VM02 images. So this is how we actually work in production, where we have a production website and there would be multiple pages, and we want the path-based routing to be enabled. So this is how we enable the path-based routing. So if you like this video, just click the like button, subscribe to my channel, and do comment. I need you to comment, need to ask questions. If you want to just write anything, just if you want to appreciate, you can appreciate. If you want to say bad things, I'm okay with that as well, just to get good feedback as well. So waiting for your suggestions as well. So thank you very much for giving us the time, and let's hope app would be creating more videos. So stay tuned. Thank you. Thanks very much.